so I like water and I love fish. I've been fishing since I was like 6 years old. So that's where I'm coming from here when I talk about the Hocking River. A friend of mine once told me, oh, it's such an ugly river. I thought, and at first I was insulted. Well, okay, I don't know what our perspectives are, but you know, whatever. Do we want to start with the picture or numbers?
Get the numbers out of the way.
All right, numbers out of the way. I don't like numbers, okay? So it's 95 miles long, slope 4.6 feet per mile, you know, if you measure the height up at the headwaters versus where it empties in the Ohio River. So that's kind of moderate for a stream its size in Ohio. It's a nice little slope that you can put your canoe in and mostly just have to steer. It'll push you downstream a little at a good rate. So the watershed size, and the watershed is all the land that if you dump water in it drains to the Hocking River. So 1,200 square miles, 122 named streams, which is kind of arbitrary. Like, how do you decide whether to name a stream or not? Like, okay, we got Sharp's Fork. Well, that's one out of 122 versus a place called Dan's Run, which is officially named Dan's Run, but it's not on that list. And 97 species of fish live here, which is pretty good diversity. I think there's about 150 in the whole state. So we got a pretty good representative of the different fish species. And the invertebrates, there's this really cool book, A Guide to Ohio Streams. I'm going to put it back there, and you all should take a picture of it. And it's being redone. It might be at the printers right now. And if you go down to the ODNR office on State Street in a couple weeks and say, hey, do you have any of these? Hopefully they'll say, yes, we do. Or can you wait a couple weeks? Anyway, there's stuff about all the Ohio streams, including the Hocking River. So the invertebrates listed in here from about 12 years ago was only about 80 different taxa. Well, I called up a lady at Ohio EPA that studies these things, and she said, oh no, in 2022, I found over 359 myself. So, and mussels, which mussels are pretty cool, clams, mussels, 27 different species. We're going to hear more about them later on. So, let's continue on. Okay, so here's the watershed, and so the river starts up here in Rock Mill, and it goes through Lancaster, and gets a bunch of sewage in it, and it comes down through here, and gets more sewage here. Oh, and it got more sewage at Sugar Grove and Logan. Goes through Nelsonville. Goes right by Chansey, then right through Athens, and eventually down to the Ohio River here at Coolville, okay? This is a land use map. So the bluish greenish stuff is forest. And forests are really, really good for water quality. The more trees you got, the better, especially right next to the stream. And the yellowish is like pasture and hay, and the red is urban areas. Just how many have lived in this area more than 10 years? Okay, so you probably know all this stuff just from driving around and whatnot. But anyway, you know, there's people that make maps and have numbers and stuff, and we spend a lot of money on satellites and whatnot gathering this information. So, when I studied fisheries in college, we had to read Troutman's Fishes of Ohio and said, if you don't understand the glaciation patterns and the geology of Ohio, you will not understand fish distribution. And since fish are the best, that's why I'm bringing it up to you all. So the glacier came down along here. Oh, and here's a glacier with me and my stuffed animal, Stormy, the storm-proof bear. Now, this is in Alaska, it's not in Ohio. But, you know, they're huge. They can be huge. And they come down along here, yeah, all this weight, pushing down on the earth and pushing horizontally. It grinds up everything, and it makes gravel out of mountains and sand, and we end up what's called glacial moraines. It's big deposits of sand and gravel. So, where's the Hocking River? Oh, that's the Muskingum. Here's the Hocking up here. So, and then this turned into a lake for a while. They called it Lake Tight, and there's like a big dam of ice and glacial moraines. Anyway, when it broke through, it took a lot of sand and gravel down the Hocking River. So there used to be a river called the Taze River that went up the other way. I asked one geologist, would it be fair to say that sometimes the Hocking River went northwest and sometimes it went southeast, and it's kind of changed, and the geologists are trying to still figure out? And he said, yeah, that's pretty close to what we think is the truth. Anyway, this is what we call the headwaters. It's called Rock Mill. So the Western Europeans came along. We are in the History Center, so I'll throw a little history in here. Western Europeans came along and said, you know, it'd be a lot easier if we had a mill and had gravity grinding our flour and cornmeal and whatnot, rather than doing it by hand. So they cut this groove in here so the water could come and power this water wheel, which would power the grindstone. And now this is owned by the Fairfield County Park District. And they rebuilt the buildings, and now it's a nice tourist spot. And this is very close to the Ohio River. So it's flattened out, it's a less steep topography. And many, many people like to go and set up their trailers and their boats. Now we're going to get into stream morphology. This is true of just about any stream in the northern hemisphere. So you have deep water, and you get to shallow with some bigger stones. That's called a riffle. It goes fast. And then you got deep water, and then a riffle, kind of a meandering pattern. So it meanders that way, both vertically and horizontally. And man struggles with that because the river wants to move horizontally across our valleys. So we got it kind of rough here because the only flat place to build houses and factories and stores is in the floodplain, or on the very steep hillsides, which is difficult. Anyway, so you just got to expect streams to move. Now we're going to get into some of the different habitats for the creatures. Well, it's different physical attributes of the stream, and different animals use different attributes. So logs and woody debris. Big fish use these, and little tiny plankton called periphyton live on their surface. And then other things eat those algae, the periphytons, and it moves on up the food chain. So if we want a diverse, rich ecosystem of plants and animals, we need this woody debris in our streams. And yes, they fall in, and sometimes they can create a hazard for boaters. And also they reduce the erosion of the stream bank. So here's this guy. He did a lot of original work on habitat types in Ohio and their connection with stream diversity. So he's showing, so that's a nice deep shelter spot. So during a flood, or any time really, there's going to be big smallmouth bass, big catfish under here. And they also have the rootlets that the little tiny fish like to hang out in. Okay, so we've got a lot of this stuff here. So several things here. We have overhanging trees, which produce shade, keep the streams kind of cool. And we have these big root wads right along the shoreline, preventing excess erosion. And all these leaves. One of the sources of energy for streams, the biota, is leaves. There are lots of little bugs that eat the leaves. They're called shredders. So they're pretty important, especially in the smaller streams. This is a nice riffle downstream of Athens along Lower River Road, I think it's called. Anyway, so we have some kind of bigger rocks. They're like, a foot and a half, and they're very stable. And they provide a lot of habitat for riffle-loving species, which we'll see some examples of. Oh, the phytoplankton. So sometimes you look at the river and it looks green. So phyto is plant, plankton is suspended. So these things take nutrients from the water, and they take CO2, and they create oxygen, and they make biotic mass. And then here's some more planktonic algae. I just started looking for pictures. I thought these are pretty cool. Hopefully you do too. All this stuff is living in the water. What I really hope for at the end of this talk is you people go and say, I had no idea there was all that stuff in the river. I drive over it all the time, and what the heck. So that's kind of cool. Now, these are the attached red algae. There is a professor at OU, Dr. Morgan Viss. She's very passionate about her red algae. So normally we think about plants being green to make oxygen. Well, these red algae, they make oxygen too, and they're attached to rocks and to logs, making a bioslime. It's kind of neat. And I had some close-up pictures of these things, and I lost them. I went up to Clear Creek with my mask and my underwater camera. Oh well. And then we have the zooplankton. Again, they're little tiny animals, and you can see they're green here. So he's been eating the phytoplankton. Yeah, how about that, Jessica? They're in there. You go swimming in there. Now, we have what's called macroinvertebrate. 359 different. And this is not just species, but some of them are through genus, species, family. So most of these, they live in the water most of their life. It might be 2 months, might be 2 years, might be 4 years. Then they emerge, fly up in the air, have sex, put their eggs back in the water, and then they die. And sometimes their adult life is hours, sometimes days. They're kind of neat. Sometimes you will see them featured in black and white monster movies from the late 50s or 60s. Here's a few more of them. Stoneflies are kind of famous. And fly fishermen, they'll go along and they'll see what's hatching, they'll catch them, look, and then they'll try to make a fly that looks exactly like it, because they think that the fish are that particular. So the dragonfly. I had a really cool picture of a dragonfly on an intern's hat. Do you think I could find it? No. Anyway, I was talking to Leah up there at Ohio EPA. She said, oh yeah, the dragonflies, they're considered to be the most effective carnivore in the animal kingdom in that they have a 95% kill rate. Like once you see them going after something, they're really good. Now they, I wouldn't say they're unique. They still feed as an adult. So like if you're in your backyard and you have a wildlife-friendly backyard, you can sit there and maybe you have a beverage, you're talking to somebody, and you can watch the dragonflies going around eating mosquitoes. But even underwater, they are just killing machines. Again, they're mostly underwater during their life, and they have a hard exoskeleton, and they've got this lower lip that can shoot out like an arm to catch things. It is really cool. And the caddisfly, here's an adult. Now, so some caddisflies, they make little houses, okay? This particular species makes them out of sticks. But look at that predator mouth. Geez. Some of them make them out of rocks. And there was a person who said, I could do something with this. So they got a bunch of really tiny gemstones and put them in the bottom of an aquarium. And they put these critters in the aquarium. So they made houses out of gemstones. And then the person made earrings out of them, I think. How cool is that? Okay, we're going to get more, we're going up the food chain, bigger and bigger animals. 6-spotted fishing spider. So yeah, it eats fish. Who would guess? And here's this Helgramite adult, 4 inches. And here they are as the nymphs. I know I saw one of these about a monster movie. They were eating downed pilots in the Salton Sea in an old movie. They make excellent fishing bait. The bass like to eat them, channel cats. Oh, and here's some of these other nests. Not nests, but homes. Oh, and some spin nets. So they spin a net there, and the current is bringing bacteria down and other little particles, and then just like a spider, they harvest what's in the nests. Oh, and the mussels are really cool. So the mussels, as a taxa group, I think he told me they're the most threatened group of animals in the world. Okay, so they are filtering water all the time. So if you live in Lancaster and you flush your extra pills down the commode or the sink, it's going to go through its wastewater treatment plant, and the mussels are going to absorb your pharmaceuticals. Or your pesticides that you put on your lawns, or your brake pads. You know, when you put on your brakes, a little bit comes off and goes on the pavement, and it rains, goes right to the river. And these folks suck it up. Now, here's a really cool thing about them. So, how do they reproduce? So the adults are down here, and the male spews, and it gets in the female and fertilizes the eggs. And then they make these little tiny things called glaucidia, okay? So it's not an adult, but it's a mussel. But the glaucidia has to live on a fish's gills for a while. Like suppose you had a parasite in your lungs. Anyway, that's for all. And then they drop off, and then they go down the bottom. So we got 27 different mussels living here. So they got to have 27 different species of fish to act as hosts. They're very particular. So I'm bringing up the salamander mussel, which has been nominated for endangered species. But the cool thing is its host is a mud puppy, which is one of the few, if not the only salamanders that maintains external gills, right? I don't know why everything doesn't try to eat those things. Anyway, so the salamander mussel has got to get its glaucidia on those gills. If you want to catch a mud puppy yourself, go down to the plunge pool below White's Mill. So go to the old red building, walk down the path, and put a piece of worm on the bottom on a hook, and you might very well catch one of these creatures. And you might say, oh, that's slimier. Oh, that looks like a little man, because they got arms and legs, and anyway, they're pretty cool. Now I'm going to go through some of the more colorful species of fish. Again, people look at the Hocking River and they just think it's brown and how boring, fish of Ohio. Southern red-bellied dace, they spawn in headwater streams. So we were living up in Perry County, And we had these fish in the creek in our backyard. So it's so cool. They make a depression like a bowl in the gravel and sweep it out. And they got these chartreuse fins and the red thing. They're just really cool. And they eat little tiny bugs, and they're detritivores. So anything coming down the stream, they're going to taste it and decide whether to eat it or not. Oh, the least brook lamprey. Don't worry, it's not parasitic. But we were living on a different stream outside of Logan. We had this little creek. We could hop across it in our yard. And I'm doing something on my car. I think I was putting some new brake pads on or something. Anyway, the offspring Alex comes up and says, "Dad, you got to see this. There's a big ball of snakes in the creek." Well, no, it was least brook lamprey spawning. So when you get home, I know you're going to put on your YouTube search thing, least brook lamprey spawning video, and you'll see these massive, like a dozen of them, and they'll pick up rocks with their sucker mouth and rearrange them in the stream, because they need their eggs to be under a rock, but water still flowing through that spaces, so they get fresh oxygen. Anyway, another really cool fish. Check this out. That's a mouth of a parasitic lamprey. When I caught it, I thought it was a sea lamprey. But no, in preparation for this presentation, I found out it was a silver lamprey. It's one of 2 parasitic lampreys in Ohio. So I caught this in the Ohio River. I was fishing, and I snagged the lamprey because I could feel it was pulling in something kind of big, and then it got not so big. So I think I pulled it off of a bigger fish that it was sucking the very lifeblood out of until I came along and saved it. And so Mark Kibbe up at the Museum of Zoology at Ohio State University, I asked him, so Mark, how many species of fish are in the Hocking River? And if you had 7 minutes to tell people about fish of the Hocking, which ones would you tell them about? This was one of them. I went right away to the gaudy ones. But he thought this trout perch was cool. And they live in streams that have nice, clean gravel, very little silt, something you might want to wade around in. And yeah, they eat little bugs, fish as predators, and the brindle bantam. Again, tops 5 inches, but isn't that a cute little devil? So remember I showed you that one riffle with the big rocks? That's where the bantams live. They go under the rocks in the daytime, gets dark, they go out, they start looking for macroinvertebrates, other fish. Really cool fish. So that's the dinky ones. And then we have the flathead catfish. Oh, I have notes here, which I can't see. Anyway, I think the state record for flathead is like 100 pounds. So what a wide variety just of catfish in our river that we call home, all right? Oh yeah, and the flatheads, fish as predators, you know, they'll eat something a foot long, live or dead. And here's a blue catfish that is not the Hocking River, but it is the Ohio River, and that's a blue cat. Again, the state record is 95 pounds thereabouts.
How big was that one?
That was probably like 40. And on this same trip, see how I got my thumb in its mouth? I got a nasty hand infection from one of these guys. I went to urgent care on New Year's Eve that year, and she fixed me right up. But oh yeah, my hand turned red, it bloated up. Are you guys liking these little personal stories? I've heard they are good. Okay, this number go Kiger Creek Power Plant. Great place to fish in the wintertime. Now, how cool is this? This high-fin carp sucker, they're very golden colored. I think they're pretty looking. So we have a lot of different sucker species. And people hear suckers and think, oh, they just eat trash along the bottom. Ixnay. They are vicious predators too. In fact, if you get near a riffle in the evening and you sit there and watch, you'll see flashes, because these fish, they go along and they're turning over rocks looking for those invertebrates. We show you the pictures of those things. So they'll eat those. And sometimes the smallmouth bass, which some people call the king of fishes, will follow the suckers along. So these fish are going after the invertebrates, but if a crawfish scoots out, these folks aren't equipped to catch them, but the smallmouth will. So that's kind of a cool thing to watch. So get yourself a pair of binoculars and stop at a bridge and just watch the fish. It's pretty fun. Beats sitting at home watching YouTube. Oh, and here's a channel cat. They get up to like 60 pounds in Ohio, something like that. Oh, this was my first. I really like this fish because its Latin name, Labadestes siculus. So it's very shiny, it's got this shiny streak, but you can almost see through it, and it's got like this beak right up here. And if you want to see hundreds, if not thousands of these, you go to Dow Lake, either to the beach or the boat ramp at night and shine a flashlight in the water, and they'll be jumping and darting all over the place. Anyway, they're pretty cool. Of course, what fish isn't? I have some more gaudy ones. And this is lives in the Hocking, central long ear, green sunfish. And then the orange throat darter. We're looking at like 3 inches here for a big one. There used to be a Sunday Creek watershed group, and their T-shirt said, "Sunday Creek, home of the orange throat darter," because it's like the most exotic fish living in Sunday Creek at the time. And then there's long-nosed gar. Again, not the Hocking River, but I'm sure there are some that big in the Hocking River. So that one's like, what, 48 inches long? I didn't talk about this yet. So the lower Hocking River, from the Ohio River, going up almost to Guysville, it is kind of like a backwater embayment of the Ohio River. There's hardly any current. You can paddle up and down, both things. So any big river fish that live in the Ohio are probably also in those lower 20 miles, including this invader. So some people in I think Arkansas thought, oh, we should import these fish from the Orient and they will help clean up our commercial fish farms of excess algae. So they imported these guys. So remember those planktons I showed you the pictures about? These fish eat those. Problem is they got wild and they reproduced, and I caught this one down in the Ohio River. I had snagged it because they don't eat big stuff, they just eat tiny stuff. And the problem is they totally interfere with the food cycle for all the fish that we've grown up to love. And now we're growing up to hate these things. So this picture went around with the ODNR fisheries people, and they'd come and said, "You didn't release that, did you?" I said, "I did, after I cut its entrails out." Oh. Anyway, they're supposed to be good to eat, but apparently it's hard marketing them. And my favorite, the American eel. Hopefully you've heard of the American eel by now because of the American Eel Preserve just outside of Chansey. So this fish is really kind of neat because of its travels. So several have been caught in the Hocking River. And the ones that were caught in the Hocking River were born out here, okay, in the Sargasso Sea. Like Africa's over here, here's Florida, and this is just like a big floating grass beds. So the little babies, they swim up the Mississippi to the Ohio, up to, what am I going to call the Hocking River here? Anyway, somewhere around in here. So from County Road 24A down to here is 1,800 miles. And then probably swam another 1,800 from here. So they come up here just to live in our little Hocking River. Doesn't that make you feel special? So they live as adults for a few years up here, and they eat dead fish or crawdads. If there's a big pack of a root wand with some sticks and leaves, they like to hide in that stuff. And then they come out at night to eat. And at our Athens County Public Library, we have a cool book about eels written by some Dutchman. and about how he grew up with his dad catching them, because they go over in Europe too. They probably don't call them American eels over there, but they're basically the same fish. And then when they say, you know, we've been living the high life for a while, we should reproduce. They go back down the river as adults. They go from a freshwater habitat out to a saltwater habitat. Somehow they made up there. It's still pretty mysterious. The scientists don't really know. Oh, and here's a redfin pickerel. That's only like 6 inches. Little brother, little cousin to the muskellunge, if you know anything about them. Oh, okay, different form of life. The turtles, the reptiles, the spiny soft shell. Aren't they cute? They thermoregulate by getting out in the sun sometimes. The Midland painted turtle. And the snapping turtle. They like to hiss at you. Now the snappers, they can get up around 40, 50 pounds. I think most of these other ones, like 5 pounds maybe. I'm kind of making that up. We got a common water snake. Oh, and the ducks. Does anybody here know Bob Scott Placer? Some of you do, local bird expert. Bob and I are pals. I said, Bob, what birds need the river that you'd like me to tell them about? So he gave me a list. Here's the wood duck, very colorful thing. And so here's mom and the babies. Sometimes you're paddling down the river, and there'll be a mom with a string of like 12 babies. And then the mom will do this thing, flap very vigorously, trying to get your attention going the other way so you won't want to go eat the babies. It's fun to watch. Mallards, of course, males and females. Great blue heron, some people like them. Fish eaters, green herons, fish eaters. Oh, they eat frogs too. And then the belted kingfisher, which I love them. They make a nice sound. They chatter a lot. You're paddling down the river and they fly away and they never go around you. None of these birds do. No, they just keep going downstream and you run into them again. You say, I'm not trying to harass you, buddy, but I got to get down this river. And then the bald eagles, I don't like because they steal fish from the ospreys, which I do like. I've seen it happen at Dow Lake. They just harass an osprey until the osprey drops the fish, and then the lowly eagle grabs it. Hooded merganser, these are diving ducks, vicious predators, they eat fish. And spotted sandpiper, they like bouncing their head and tail up a lot. They go up and down like this along the shoreline. They're kind of cute. Oh, and the bank swallows. They need steep vertical banks. They make a nest in there. And they come out and eat a lot of flies on the wing. And the cliff swallows. And Bob told me, oh yeah, since Ohio started building bridges out of concrete, the population of cliff swallows has really increased. So you go to most any concrete bridge over the river, go underneath it and look at, and you'll see these nests. They're kind of, the size of a grapefruit, something like that. And they're just sticking mud up on, again, they eat insects on the fly. And then we have the mammals, the beaver, and the river otters. I've seen river otters on the river. They're pretty cool. They eat fish, crayfish, clams. And they are what? They're close to like 4 feet long. They had been extirpated in Ohio. ODNR got some from other states, I think maybe Arkansas or something, and released them, and they've been doing really well. All of the Appalachian streams are doing well. And
So were they here originally?
oh yeah, and we came along, did a pretty good job of almost killing every single one of them. We're pretty good at that. Make great furs, a stole for your neck or something. And the muskrat, I think they have really nice pelts, their fur. They mostly eat plants, but they also eat mussels. So you'll go along the shore of the river and you'll see a pile of mussel shells. Well, that's what these guys do. They harvest them, bring them back to the same place, and chew on them. And the mink, they're really cute. If you paddle along, see those. They're a very playful creature, like a little relative of the otter. Oh, I really didn't want to talk much about flooding because people talk about it so much. But so rivers are supposed to flood. It's just a natural part of living on Earth. But apparently we got sick of Athens getting flooded. And instead of moving up to high ground, everybody moving to the plains, they said, oh, let's try to change this. So they dug a new channel. And it was called the Athens Local Protection Project. So, we saw in our other pictures of the river where there's lots of trees overhanging and stuff. And here we got no trees overhanging. It's just all grass. So I was talking to the guy who works for the Athens Conservancy District. A lot of people complain about, the ecological destruction, and that is all very true. But I said to the guy in charge, I said, but as a society, we have sacrifice zones, have parking lots so we can go to the grocery store, and we've got to try to minimize those. And maybe they would do this differently nowadays, who knows? So man's use. Source of drinking water. Now, there aren't any places that take water directly out of the river. It's like we have a well field. When I say we, the Athens city has a well field between Armitage and the river. So there's a lot of sand and gravel under there. Remember the glaciers and the sand and gravel? So water can be pulled from the river through that sand and gravel to our drinking water wells. And anyway, so we have recreation, bird watching, fishing, scenery. It's also a waste receptacle. And back in the day, we got power from it for the mills. And now we'll have some pictures that demonstrate those words. My loving spouse. Some folks that worked for the Sunday Creek Watershed Group fishing. They got a couple white crappie there. Apparently, she loves the one. Going to kiss it. Now, so I talk about mankind, and I think I told you that forests are better forests than not forests. So, back in the day, we came along and said, oh, let's cut down all the trees. Why not? So they did that. And of course, back then, probably erosion was really, really bad, delivering a lot of silt to the river. And remember, we want spaces between the rocks, and the silts can smother those rocks and make it a less healthy place for some of the creatures that live there. So we wanted power. So some folks built a mill up near Logan, I think early half 1800s, and built a canal. So they had to have dams on the river to have enough water for the canals. And I think we can be pretty sure that the people in the canal boats just threw their waste, out the window. Oh, so this is what I think is now known as White's Mill. It was a woolen factory and flouring mill. Anyway, important thing to notice here, probably the most important thing, is people fishing. So one of the reasons that this area, this plunge pool, is such an excellent place to fish is, remember I talked, it's connected to the Ohio River, so all those riverine species, most of them move up into smaller streams to reproduce. So in springtime, they're moving up here and they hit this waterfall and they can't go any further. So it makes a great place for fish to congregate. And the old expression, it's like catching fish out of a barrel.
Is this White's Mill or was this the Mill Street?
I have about 40% certainty that this is White's Mill.
It's the mill at Mill Street.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's Mill Street.
Oh, good. Somebody was more confident than me. So is that downstream of White's Mill?
Yeah, where the Stimson Avenue Bridge is going.
Interesting.
There's a historic marker there.
Okay, this one, it says White's Mill. I have like 95% confidence that this is White's Mill. So the city keeps saying there's a dam here. When they talk about rejuvenating the river, there ain't no dam here. This is a natural bedrock escarpment. I like the term escarpment because I got it from the old Tarzan movies.
There was a dam.
There was, and you can go there, and you can look in the rock and you see where grooves were cut for timbers to be put down and holes where I'm assuming they drove iron pins down. Oh, I didn't talk about ownership of the river yet. This is what happens when you don't make notes. So, who owns this? The water. Right, we all do. It's waters of the state. It belongs to all of us in this room. Everybody who lives in Ohio owns it. Who owns this rock? Right. And I think over here the city owns this. Anyway, the lesson is the water is owned by all of us. It's waters of the state, but all the land around it belongs to somebody. So if you're paddling on the river, there's this nice gravel bar. You think you'll get out and have a picnic. Well, you're really going on somebody's land without asking, probably, unless you did ask. So it's kind of tricky.
How small do the streams have to be before they're private?
The way I read the law, if like a ping pong ball can float down it,
Okay.
if it's connected. A private pond on your own lake that's not connected by a stream, that is not waters of state. So that has been argued back and forth in the Supreme Court over the years in regards to the Clean Water Act. Yes?
Do we have stream access in Ohio?
I think I know what you're asking. I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
Okay.
Like some states, I think Wisconsin, if you park by the side of the road by a bridge and you walk down the Department of Transportation easement property, and once you get to the stream, you can keep walking up and down. Not in Ohio. Nah. Oh, man's use. So some people go pick up garbage because it makes them feel better about themselves. And some people put garbage in. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's fun too. Who knows? So I used to belong to a group called the Friends of Hocking River. We did more stuff up around Logan, and we hosted an annual river cleanup. And oh my golly, the stuff we'd get out of there. I once found a letter in a bottle that was, I think it was 8. Jane, do you remember this letter? It was like 8 full sides, 8.5 by 11, handwritten letter. A woman from Lancaster was looking for a lover. It was kind of neat. I'm glad she put it in the river, but we found it in one of these cleanups. But yeah, we got so many tires and dishwashers, you name it.
You didn't call her, did you?
No. We sent the letter around the office because it was kind of mirthful. So let's talk about being a good neighbor. So I think most of us in here have a room like this, and things go in here or in here, and it eventually, like my stuff, goes here to the Athens wastewater treatment plant, and I pay for my waste to be treated so that it does not harm the stream, hopefully. So the city has an agreement with the citizens of Ohio. It's called a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. And it says, do you want to talk about that one?
That's a big mouthful.
I got it right though, didn't I?
You did.
Abbott and I have known each other for years. We worked in the Division of Surface Water at EPA. She did a lot of good work trying to keep our river safe and clean for fish and animals and humans. Anyway, they get certain limits of how much nitrogen they can put in, or bacteria, phosphorus, and solids, all that kind of stuff. And I think Athens does a pretty good job. And I'm happy to pay them do that because I want to be a responsible neighbor to the stream.
Do they truck
Oh, now Abbott, you tell me if I'm wrong.
I don't know anymore.
So part of the process at the wastewater plant is there are microbes in there that eat our nutrients that we flush down the toilet, okay? And we call those things biosolids. So we give them lots of oxygen, so they're really doing a good job. They're consuming the nutrients, and then they settle out those biosolids. Some places apply them to fields. It's great fertilizer. You might be concerned about what else is in there besides just human feces. Are there heavy metals? Are there pharmaceuticals? Who knows? Because the wastewater treatment plant doesn't take out all that, or PFASs, we're hearing about. It doesn't take that stuff out. My understanding, and this is only a rumor now, that Athens now dries out those biosolids and takes them to a landfill. Again, that's only rumor. But if you go there along the bike path, they got a nice little display about how their system works, which I think is commendable that they do that. Let's stay here. You might live in the country and you might have a septic system. So to be a good neighbor, if you have an aerator, make sure it's plugged in and working and that your septic system is working correctly. You could call the health district and say, hey, I'm not sure about my septic system. Can you come and check it out? And they might or might not do that. And they might say, no, it's not working right and it's going to cost you $5,000 to get it working right. Is that on the low side?
Well, I mean, it could need to be replaced.
Right, could be the whole thing might need replacement. Anyway, we have to spend resources so that we don't pollute the rivers, okay? And it's easier for us people in the city. We just pay the water and sewer bill every month. If you live out in the country, it's not so easy. So we talked about trees are good for streams, right? So if you have woods along a stream, please plant some trees along it, like this person did. And keep the cattle out of the streams. So like they're destroying the habitat and they are pooping in the stream. Like, you got neighbors downstream, why would you poop on your neighbors? But I got this picture out of New Zealand. We have had programs in our country for decades to try to encourage farmers to put up a fence here and plant trees. There are still a lot of people who do not, and they let their cows do this. No, I have something to read before you guys read that. So quit reading. So the number one trees for streams in Ohio are sycamores. They're like the iconic tree. When I showed you those big root wads and the big trees, they're almost all sycamores. They get up to 140 feet tall. The state champion is 29 feet in circumference. So very big, very stable trees. They really cut down erosion. They really cut down how much land you lose to a flood because they help hold the bank. And they're very good habitat. It's the only tree found in all 88 counties of Ohio. At least it said that in here. Okay? It does really well along streams, and it's really easy to transplant, and they grow fast. And something I like, I think they're just beautiful trees. In the wintertime, you look across the valley and see these big old sycamores. Bald eagles like to nest in them. Other birds do too. Okay.
Is there another tree? Are there other trees that are good?
Oh yeah, that is like the iconic one. Silver maples do really well along the river as well. I don't think they're as beautifully, aesthetically, I don't like them so much. And I don't think wildlife uses them as much. They don't get as big. And they're cheap. And the Soil and Water District has a tree sale in the spring. They're like 75 cents a piece. So you can plant a whole bunch of them. So after putting this off for months, preparation for this talk, I started talking to different people. I think I already talked about Dr. Viss. She is really great, very enthusiastic about this. And I found this website, thedragonflywoman.com. Mark Kibbe, the university has a museum of biological diversity, a great guy, very giving with his time. He loves fish. Oh, and because of this project, now I have a voucher specimen photo at the museum. It was that bloody silver lamprey. He said, oh yeah, that's a great one. Bob Scott Placer, I just know him as a friend. He knows a lot about birds. Leah Caldy, she works in the ecological assessment group. She goes out and looks for the macroinvertebrates. And Abbott told me about this deceased person, Cliff Kittle. If you like pictures from our area, he has a Facebook page and they're all categorized. You can search for them. I mean, the time he spent getting all those on there to share with us, just amazing. Missouri Department of Conservation has a lot of good stuff about the creatures that live in our streams. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a great image library. So you can click on that. And you got to put in the whole word, like hyphen carpsucker if you just, anyway, it's a great search thing. I got a lot of images from that. Probably some people want to defund it, but anyway, I think it's a great place. We don't get into too much of politics here. TheDragonflyWoman.com, her website's pretty interesting. She hasn't put anything on there recently, but now, do you remember at the end of the Looney Tunes that had Porky Pig saying, "That's all, folks"? I tried to figure out how to copy that video to put on here, but you'll just have to imagine it.